I'm not really sure how to process what I just watched. Comedy movies have basically gone extinct from theaters, so a David Spade comedy getting a theatrical release in 2026 just feels off. But with the success of YouTuber-driven films like Shelby Oaks and Iron Lung, this movie might actually prove that creators are about to reshape Hollywood. But after watching it, it's nothing like what you'd expect, and the reasons why are a lot stranger than you'd think. I went into this movie with basically zero bias, but almost immediately, something just felt seriously off. Of course I know who Theo Von is, but I've probably listened to like 5 of his podcasts in my entire life, and while I've enjoyed them, I've felt completely indifferent to him. And I've never actually seen any of his stand-up, so I really didn't know what to expect from him in a movie like this. I did like David Spade in PCU and Grown Ups, but I've never been particularly drawn to him, or away from him for that matter. I generally try to avoid trailers, but I let curiosity get the best of me, and after seeing it, I definitely had a prediction for how I'd feel about this movie. Yet somehow it didn't prepare me at all for what this movie actually is. And I genuinely didn't know how to react to it at first, because this movie made some incredibly bizarre choices. But the opportunity to see an original comedy movie in theaters in 2026? What a concept! I couldn't pass it up. But this is where things get really confusing, because the movie follows 2 middle-aged guys who work some blue-collar job, but I don't really know what it is that they do. Because in one scene they're working with sewage, and in the next, they're working on cars. And after a rough night out with his girlfriend, David Spade's character decides to take Theo Von's character along with him to Mexico, but then they decide they want to be busboys. And then, well, actually, you know what? Forget about it. The plot of this movie changes like every 3 minutes, and I just got out of the movie, but I honestly could not even tell you what this movie was about. And that's where the biggest problem starts. But I've got to give major props to David Spade. The man still got it. He was by far and away the funniest and most believable actor in this movie, which unfortunately makes everything else about this movie stand out a lot more. Spade actually made me laugh out loud several times early on in the movie, and it really brought me back in and gave me hope. And he even made me laugh a couple more times throughout the movie. But the biggest problem is that he really was the extent of the acting in this movie. I'm not really sure what was going on, because something just felt off almost immediately. Outside of Spade, it felt like virtually every other character in this movie was played by a first-time actor who wasn't given any direction at all. And once you notice it, it really sticks out. Starting with Theo Von. He plays the typical moron type you frequently saw in comedies from the 2000s. You know the type. They're the idiot, but they're always your favorite character. And when it works, those characters don't just steal the movie, they become iconic. They were clearly going for something in the realm of Zach Galifianakis from The Hangover, or an Ashton Kutcher, Sean William Scott type from Dude, Where's My Car? But it just really didn't work. And the reason it didn't is actually pretty simple. You can tell he's just not an experienced actor. And I want to be clear. It's incredibly difficult to act. I know a lot of people look at, quote, bad performances, and they sit back on their couch and they say, I could do better. When in reality, no, you couldn't. Asking someone like Theo Von this early on in his acting career to play the lead role in a comedy movie is just asking way too much out of him. He would have been much better suited for a cameo, because this kind of role depends on way more than just being funny. If you're going to have someone with this level of experience playing the lead role, you need a damn good director, damn good writers, and damn good producers. But this production, unfortunately, had none of the above. And that's where everything starts to fall apart, because now the movie just has nothing holding it together, which really makes me wonder why this is. And I haven't even gotten to the most unfortunate part of the story yet. They apparently self-funded the movie entirely on $3 million, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but Swingers, Clerks, and Napoleon Dynamite all had considerably lower budgets. So by no means was this a money problem. I mean, surely they could have found a better director and better writers and producers to come in and help with the script and the overall movie. These aren't some random rich guys looking to launder money through a movie like Tommy Wiseau with The Room. These guys are well connected, which makes what they ended up with even more baffling, because this should have been the easiest part of the production for them. Theo Von's had some very funny people on his podcast, like Vince Vaughn, Shane Gillis, and Matthew McConaughey, and David Spade's longtime friends with Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, and Rob Schneider. I find it hard to believe they couldn't have landed 1 or 2 of those people to play lead or supporting roles. And given how connected they are in this world, surely there's an endless supply of funny people and or talented actors to round out the cast. But the acting isn't even the biggest issue. I just didn't get this movie. And I don't think that's a me problem. I think pretty much everyone else is going to feel the same way. The movie's clearly satirical, but I don't know exactly what they're satirizing, and that gets old really fast. The dialogue is also quite awkward, and oftentimes I didn't even know what was supposed to be a joke and what wasn't. It was made even more uncomfortable by the constant line delivery that felt like it was playing to a laugh track. I'm not exaggerating when I say it felt like there were entire sequences in this film that were written by artificial intelligence, because they just didn't even feel human in the slightest bit. And comedy is literally the last genre that you want to feel robotic. So they wanted this movie to break the rules of reality, and that's cool. That style of comedy has been done really well in the likes of Euro Trip, Scary Movie, and Dude, Where's My Car? Those movies are completely over the top, but they still make sense, because there's logic to all of the chaos. The biggest thing separating Busboys from those kinds of movies is that while there are constantly things going on in those movies that would never happen in the real world, the characters are at least living within the rules of that universe and acting believably. You believe the characters even if you had to massively suspend disbelief in the world around them. But that just doesn't happen in this movie. It also would have been nice to at least care about the characters in the slightest in this movie, but that just doesn't happen either. And thus, the movie just really doesn't have anything to lean on, which is really unfortunate because when you don't care about the characters at all, it just completely derails any opportunity whatsoever for comedy. In fact, I frequently forgot what their goals even were in this movie until I was reminded. And by the time the climax hit, I honestly didn't care at all whether they came out on top or not. Yet even in the goofiest of comedies, when done well, you definitely find yourself rooting for the characters, or at least emotionally invested. I will at least give them props in that they definitely push the boundaries of what you can and can't say in a movie. They definitely said words and touched on subjects that virtually everyone else in the industry would have been afraid of touching out of fear of being canceled, but they unfortunately just didn't really stick the landing with any of it. It sucks because they had the courage to actually try it out, but they just didn't have the execution. I really hate to bag on, but this movie really felt like the first draft of a first-time screenwriter, and that feeling just never fades. I really hadn't seen any buzz about this movie coming out. In fact, I actually found out by accident that this movie was coming out this weekend, and I don't think the reason for why there wasn't any buzz was exactly an accident, and I get it. I've directed 2 features myself. My first one is actually streaming for free on Tubi. You can even make your own review tearing it apart. I've been on the other side of this, and it's not fun at all. In fact, I probably wouldn't disagree with many, if not all of your criticisms of my films. Filmmaking is incredibly hard, and I don't want to be the guy that's constantly other filmmakers. I'll go as far as to say that roughly 10 minutes into the movie, when I knew where it was heading, I no longer even wanted to make this review. But I made a poll for this video and wanted to try doing a review as more and more comedy movies are starting to come to theaters, and it really doesn't do anyone any good to just sit here and lie about what I just watched. So I'll say to Theo, I've been there, and I don't say any of this lightly. I get it. Making a good movie is incredibly difficult, and I would say I'm yet to write or direct a good one myself. I'm really feeling the third one that we've got going into production this summer. I think we've actually finally got something on our hands, but I know exactly what it feels like to pour your heart and soul into a movie just for it to turn out less than stellar. So I remain optimistic that he'll learn from this experience and be able to craft something much better next time around, because I know him and David are capable of it. I'm really conflicted about the performance of this movie because it matters way more than you'd think. It's not just about one movie. To be abundantly clear, in no way am I rooting against this movie. On one hand, if the movie flops, the narrative's just going to be, see, I told you so. Comedy movies just don't have a theatrical audience post-COVID, which just isn't true. Just look at the box office receipts of movies like Anyone But You, Freakier Friday, and The Naked Gun, just to name a few. But I also fear that if this movie makes a healthy profit, we're just going to get more of the same and no one's going to learn anything from this. And that's the real danger here. But then bringing it back, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a filmmaker, and I want Hollywood to take notice on the power of bringing YouTubers to theaters. So I don't even know anymore. I think the best case scenario is that this movie does well, but then several lessons are also learned along the way. I really admire the hell out of what Theo and David did by going completely independent and bringing their passion to life. Regardless of how the finished product turned out, or how it performs at the box office, that takes serious guts, and I hope they feel good that they at least tried. Because the truth is, 99.9% of people in their shoes never would have even made it to the starting line. But they did, and I applaud them for that. That's not to say it's all bad. I would love to see David Spade star in another comedy movie, and I definitely gained a ton of respect for him from this one. And if you make it all the way to the third act, you get to see a ton of hot chicks in bikinis. But I'm just one guy. Go see the movie for yourself. I'm giving Busboys a 2 out of 10. And if you miss great comedies in theaters, I'm sure you love The Hangover. But did you know that it almost never got made? And the way the director convinced the studio was by forfeiting his entire salary on the movie. But that's not even the craziest thing that happened. And I take you on this incredible but shocking journey of The Hangover here.